Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I'm showing you a technique that I'm calling neon grunge stamping, featuring some of the Gina and Rina K neon inks and some of the brand new Rina K and ThermoWeb collaboration products. Do not run away because I said the word neon. The neon colors are much more versatile and much less intimidating than you think that they are. I'm going to be using the colors Blaring Blue, Poppin Pink, Screamin Green, and Hello Yellow. I'll also be using this awesome set called Sending Sunshine, which is one of the new Rina K and ThermoWeb collaboration stamp sets. There is a coordinating die set as well, and there's also a coordinating stencil set, which you'll see later on. I'm using the pineapple first, and I'm stamping the whole thing in Hello Yellow. I will be using my MISTI for this technique because it requires a lot of repeat stamping. If you're really good at lining up stamps with a clear block, by all means use that, but I am not, and I can't live without my MISTI. So after stamping the whole pineapple in Hello Yellow, I'm going to use a little piece of foam to pick up some of the Screamin Green from the ink pad. And I'm going to dab it onto the stamp in just a few different areas, not all over the whole thing, and then stamp it. I'm going to repeat the process to darken it a little more and then stamp again. One of the nice things about the MISTI also is that I can stamp two of the images, and every time I do this, every time I rotate the paper, it's going to be in perfect position no matter what. So that's really helpful to get things done a little bit faster. After I finish with the green ink, I'm going to take the pink ink pad, the Poppin Pink, and I'm going to tip it and edge the stamp with the pink, only around the outside edge. This first time that I'm stamping it directly after applying the ink pad. With the second time that I'm going to stamp it, I'm going to take a clean sponge and I'm going to just dab away some of the ink edging. It gives a little bit more of a faded out and spotty, spongy texture. You'll see in a second when I hold it up closer to the camera. I'm calling this the neon grunge technique because it gives it a little bit less of an in-your-face neon vibe and more of that vintagey, not perfect stamping. I know a lot of people are intimidated by the neon colors, but they don't always have to be really vibrant and really, really loud. That's why I like this technique. For the spiky leaves on the pineapple, I'm actually going to start with the sponging, and I'm going to sponge the green ink into the middle of that stamp, leaving the tips of the spiky leaves empty or blank. I'm going to layer it up a little bit so you get some variation in color. Again, I'm going to flip the paper so that I can do the same thing on the other side. When I'm finished with the green sponging, I'm then going to take the Blaring blue ink and edge around the tips of the spiky leaves, just like I did with the pink ink pad around the edge of the pineapple, so that it only gets the outer edges. I'm going to build the color up again, and then you'll see where there's a little area where the green and the blue don't quite touch, and that's very easy to fix by sponging a little bit more of the green up towards the top, and it will help them blend out nicely when I stamp it again. You'll see that building up that color a couple times gives it a nice little blended effect. I'm doing the same thing for the other side and edging around the top of those leaf tips with the blue ink and then stamping it several times. I really like the way these colors mix together, and I think if this stamping technique really gives it sort of a vintage vibe. It makes me think of like 70s Florida vacation, some kind of old postcard. I really like how this effect makes it a little bit less bright and fluorescent with these neon colors, which is also fun, but just a different look. I'm going to do these citrus fruit now, and I was giving an example here where you can see the green edging around the edge of the yellow fruit. I start like I did with the pineapple, and I stamp the entire thing first in Hello Yellow. I did clean it a little bit because there was some stuff stuck on the stamp and I wanted to get a nice clean impression. So I stamp it first in yellow. And again, one of the nice things about the Misty is that I can position it next to the pineapple, and when I flip the paper, it's already in the perfect spot on the opposite side. After the yellow, I use the technique with the green where I tilt the stamp pad and stamp just around the edge with that ink. It leaves a nice blended green edge around the yellow. There is a coordinating stamp that will stamp the inside pulp area, but I'm going to be using some of the glitter Glitz gel later to stencil that instead. So you'll be able to see how the coordinating stencil set works with these awesome stamps. For the last element, I'm going to take the large leaf and I'm going to use exactly the same technique that I've done with the other stamps. I'm going to start with the Hello Yellow and stamp on both sides of the paper. I'm curious to know if anybody who's watching this video is really good at lining up the blocks, because I am terrible at this technique, and I've seen other people in videos that are so good at lining things up with a clear block, and I just cannot for the life of me do it without my stamp positioner. I'm sponging some of the green ink, just like I did with the pineapple, onto some edges of the leaves in random spots. I'll be following this up with edging the whole thing in the blue ink. Depending on how much you tilt the ink pad that you're using for the outside edging, you'll be able to get thinner or thicker lines. After trying it a few times, you'll be able to get a feel for how much you really need to tip the ink pad. And if you feel like you've put too much on the stamp, you can use a clean sponge or a piece of paper towel or a wipe or something like that to remove some of the ink, like I did initially with the pink ink around one of the pineapple edges. So now you can see that cool little spotty, speckly grunge effect that you get after using that stamp technique. I'm going to speed really quickly through this process of die cutting the fruit. You're probably familiar with the process of die cutting, so I won't go too much into it, but I just wanted you to be able to see the really nice coordinating die set that goes along with these stamps. You'll have to ignore the really grungy, dirty plates from my Sidekick here. I actually bought this Sidekick when it was on sale for about $20 on Amazon because my daughters really love to die cut with me. But the really big machine, my big Sizzix machine, is a little bit tough for them to handle. And so I bought them their own tiny die cutting machine, and it's really nice for using on camera. So for the last step in prepping these little images, I'm going to be using the coordinating stencil, which is really cool, and some of the Screamin green glitter Glitz gel. I'm just stenciling it liberally over. I didn't use any tape. I didn't use any pixie spray or anything. I just laid it down quickly and used my hands to stabilize it, and it didn't move at all. It stencils really, really cleanly, and it's this gorgeous, gorgeous bright green sparkle. Okay, so I have a confession to make. I really messed up on part of this card. I'm going to show you this part here because I'm going to show you the technique, but then I'm also going to show you where I completely scrapped this idea and started again. I decided to leave my mistake in here because I wanted to show you how I fixed it. Well, I guess I shouldn't really call it a mistake. It's really more I just wasn't happy with the final product and I wanted to show you how I fixed it without ruining the whole thing. To stamp this sentiment, I stamped it first in the Hello Yellow, and then I used the technique with the sponging of the green and blue to give it that grungy effect. The Hello Yellow is an amazing color, but it is a little bit hard to see for the sentiment. So this made it much easier to see and kept it in line with the other stamped images. I started using my ink pad to go around the edge of the card. I went a little hard in the corners and then I decided to add in the blue with some sponging. This is a really cool effect, but I just didn't love how it came out in the end, the way that I did it. And the problem was that I imagined myself putting all of the images in the bottom left corner. And I really did not place the sentiment well. It didn't look very balanced. The sentiment looked way too far away from the cluster. So I ended up cutting out the entire bottom cluster off the card after I had already glued and used foam tape to stamp it down. So I'm starting entirely again with the sentiment stamping process here. And I was able to save it by keeping the cluster all together. So I'm doing the exact same stamping technique where I stamped the whole sentiment in yellow and then I used the sponges to add the green and the blue. This time I was much happier with the placement of the stamp because I was able to use the cluster to position it a little bit better. When I finished the stamping, I decided to do the edging again as well. This time, however, I didn't use the ink pad directly. I used the sponges to apply both colors. I liked the effect I got a little bit better with this, and I felt like I had a little more control of where the ink was going. If you use directly from the ink pad, it tends to give a little bit harsher lines, and you can see some of the streaks, which is a really cool look sometimes. It just wasn't quite what I was going for on this card. So again, I added the blue with the sponge as well. And then my cluster was a lot better positioned. You can see right there how piece of the original cardstock is still attached to all of that cluster. And it doesn't even matter because once you glue it down, you'll never be able to tell. So it worked out much, much better this time around. So if you make a giant mistake and you've already glued your pieces on, it's okay. You can probably still fix it by cutting the whole cluster off. I ended up adding some pink into the edging as well. And I do like the look that it achieved. It tied it in a little bit better since the pineapple is the only place that I had used the pink on the stamping. To finish it off for the final touch, I used the stencil again with the Screamin green Glitz gel. And I use the portion of the stencil that is actually meant to go over the pineapple, and it has these cute little triangle-y shapes. It comes out looking like a neat little geometric pattern if you just stamp pieces of it around the edge. I mean stencil. I think I said stamp. What I meant was stencil. I also brought some of the Hello Yellow glitter glitz gel in to finish it off. I'd also like to point out that you really should wash your stencils right after you use them, so don't do what I do, because it takes a lot longer to scrape off the leftover glitter glitz gel and pastes and things like that. For the video purposes, I wanted to get everything done quickly, and everyone else in my house was asleep, so I left some of that green on, but you should go wash it off right away after you're done. If you'd like to use some purple tape or some pixie spray to stabilize the stencil while you're doing this part, you definitely can, although it's not necessary because the final result is supposed to be a little less perfect and a little more grungy and scattered. So this is the final look. I hope you enjoyed this technique. I hope that you try it out either with the neons or with any other inks that you might have laying around. The technique with the sponges and the edging will work perfectly with whatever you have. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.